So welcome to this final video in this series of videos I've been doing all about the Sigma prime lens that I've got. So this is a review and overview of the Sigma 500mm F4.5 APO DG EX HSM hypersonic mounted lens, and I'm going to do a roundup of some brick images we've got here. Just in brief, just to let you know that it's a 2005 prime lens that Sigma brought out to try and compete with the likes of Canon, Nikon and Sony, I believe. And what you'll find is this lens is pretty good for the price. You can pretty much pick it up for around £1,500 off eBay. Yes, there is a newer version of it which has been released in the past couple of years, which is an F4 variant, which does include optical stabilizer. This particular lens has no image stabilization, so you do need to take that into account, which means you probably will be relying on tripods and monopods. But this is an overview of the quality that you can achieve from this particular lens. You've got to remember it is a 2005 lens, and what that means is that older lenses really struggle with newer cameras, mainly because of the density of the megapixels, especially on APS-C cameras. And if you don't know what APS-C is, I am referring to crop sensor cameras with a smaller sensor. And because it's a smaller sensor, they have to cram the pixels in tighter and they're smaller. This has the added benefit of cropping your image and giving you more magnification, but it also has a disadvantage where full frame gathers more light and it's a bigger sensor, but APS-C is a smaller sensor and it gathers less light, so there is a trade-off. So we're going to have a look at some images of brickwork that I've taken here. One's on the EOS R, which is a 30 megapixel full frame camera, adapted with the adapter on. This is an EF Sigma lens for Canon, so it's a Canon EF mount, and also the 90D, which is a crop sensor camera, and that's megapixel is rated at 32 megapixels on that particular sensor, so it's an APS-C sensor. So we're just going to briefly have a look at the brickwork here and see if we can determine if there's any sort of distortion going off. Now typically you will have two different types of distortion, but I'll go into that shortly. But first of all, let's address the image quality. So here we have an image at f4.5. That's the aperture, which is a large aperture that lets lots of light in. And we've taken a picture of the brickwork to try and determine contrast, have a look at the sharpness, and see if we're getting a good image from f4.5 from this lens. And let's have a look at the quality by zooming in. So we want to have a look at the center first of all. So let's go in there at about 50% there. And I think we're getting good contrast, getting good tones there, and it looks reasonably sharp. I wouldn't say it's completely tack sharp, but it's not far off, and it looks pretty reasonable. However, when I start to look into the corners here, to me it just looks a little bit on the soft side. So what we're determining here is that in the corners it's not completely sharp. In the centre, I wouldn't say it's tack sharp, I'd just say it's sharp. And then if we go to the top corner here, while it looks reasonably sharp, it's just not completely tack sharp. And obviously at the edges here, it doesn't look too fantastic. But obviously when you zoom out, it's looks reasonable. And I would say that's certainly usable. So let's have a look at the next image, which is at f8. Obviously, on my previous video, I addressed vignetting, and we are getting vignetting. So at f8, that vignetting is pretty much eliminated. So obviously the image is improved, and so has the contrast improved. Now if we go to the center again, it looks sharper. Again, I wouldn't say it's completely tack sharp. I wouldn't say it's super tack sharp, but I would say it's a huge improvement and looks pretty good. So if we compare the center with the 4.5, let's just go into where that hole is there, and then we have a look at F8. It does look better, you know, the colours seem more vivid and it does look sharper to me. So that's my assessment of the EOS R full frame. Let's have a look at the APC image we have at F4.5. Starting off, obviously we still have some vignetting going off, even with the APS-C being in the majority of the actual centre of the lens. But looking at the image, it looks pretty bad, if I'm honest with you. It's not even sharp. Things are quite blurry to me. The corners are absolutely atrocious. But if let's go in there, we're having a look at 50%. I don't need to zoom in any more than that. It's awash with blurriness. It looks terrible. Sharpness is non-existent. And if we try moving down to corners, I suspect it will get even worse. There's very little contrast going off. There's no sharpness to speak of. It's pretty much almost like you're looking through a bad pair of glasses. The top here is just not sharp, it's blurry. And this is APS-C on the 90D, which has 32 megapixels. Obviously the megapixels are more crammed in. Just remember it is 800 millimeters. But my assessment, as I've said in the previous videos, is that sharpness is not very good on APS-C at F4.5. In fact, it's so bad that I wouldn't want to use it at that aperture, even if you needed to gather more light. You'll get away with it on full frame, but I don't believe you would be able to do that on APS-C. And let's just have a look at F8. So I would say there's a vast improvement compared to full frame when you're comparing F4.5 to F8 on APS-C versus F4.5 to F8 on full frame. The difference on APS-C is night and day. Looking at this, obviously again, I do think these older lenses are struggling with the higher megapixel counts. You've got to remember, when this lens was made, you're talking cameras such as the 1D Mark III that had maybe 10 megapixels. Now we've got cameras with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 megapixels. And I don't think the older lenses are able to deal with the high megapixel count of the modern day cameras. So, you know, obviously this is a F8 and it looks reasonable. I would not say it's tack sharp either. I would say it's nowhere near what I would consider croppable. I would not want to crop this image because if you translate this into the real world, you are not going to get absolute tack sharp images. Sure, if you start zooming out, I don't think you're going to know the difference. But if you're a perfectionist and you're looking for the absolute sharpest imagery you can get, I think you may feel disappointed with this lens. So let's talk about distortion. There's two types of distortion, which is barrel distortion, which applies to wide angle lenses and zoom lenses typically, and pincushion distortion, which is applicable to telephoto lenses and high mega zoom lenses, such as the Tamrons and Sigmas 150 to 600s. So I'll just show you a graph here of what pincushion distortion looks like. As you can see, it bends the lines. Distortion in lenses is bending light to a certain way, and obviously you can see this, it's pinching, hence the word pincushion distortion. It's pinching the image. So if we translate that to our F8 image and we zoom out, we are looking at the lines in the bricks, because brickwork is a really good test for lenses to see if there's any sort of distortion going off. Now, I'm looking at the distortion here for pincushion distortion, and I see very little. The lines look very straight to me, so I don't think this lens suffers with any major issues regarding pincushion distortion. But we're more than happy to look at the APS-C one. Again, I don't think there's any distortion going on there. Just remember, APS-C cameras magnify the center. So instead of getting a 500mm lens, because it's a 1.6 crop, you apply the 1.6 to the actual focal length, and we're actually at 800mm at f8. Obviously this lens can go to f4.5 at 800mm, but again, if we just go back to the previous image, I would like to zoom out so you can see that for yourself. So if we just zoom out, make sure the pictures are the same in terms of the size. So that's f8 and that's f4.5. Clearly you can see there's a difference there, and it just doesn't look sharp at f4.5, so I would not recommend using this lens on APS-C if possible, or if you're going to use it on APS-C, stick to f8 in terms of your aperture. Now if we look at EOS R, this is a full frame camera, we can clearly see that there is some loss of sharpness when we go to f4.5, but it's not dramatic. So let's just zoom out of that so you can see that. So that's f8 and that's f4.5. They look very similar, and you're only going to notice the softness if you start pixel peeping into the actual image. But I think you would be happy with this lens on a full frame camera. No issues there. However, when we start looking at APS-C, it just feels like it's just far too soft to be usable. And let's just check the f8 image just so you've got a quick comparison, and it's night and day. So that's f8, 4.5, f8, 4.5. So let's just go back to our pincushion distortion image here. So essentially, if I was to see lots of distortion, I would expect the lines of these bricks here to basically be doing that, a bit of a curve, even a minor curve. But from what I can tell, I don't see any sort of pincushion distortion there. There may be a slight amount there, but it's so small it's not detectable by my eyes. But what I would also say is you're more than likely to get pincushion distortion on zoom lenses, as well as barrel distortion, which affects wide angle shots on wide angle lenses. However, prime lenses don't typically suffer from distortion a lot, because they've got one fixed focal length, and the manufacturers have focused all their skills and research and techniques to try and get that prime lens to be the best it can be. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time for watching these videos. It is a good lens, and I do think you would be very happy with it. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, it really helps me. Please don't leave without doing that, because I need your help to grow this channel. But thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice day, and see you later.